Clinical pathways, cost containment strategies, oncology practice viability. How can payers and providers work more closely to create win-win situations for their organizations and for their patients? In what ways can pharmaceutical manufacturers be active parts of this ongoing discussion? Join us to find out. In the Know starts now. Hello and welcome to In the Know, your source for insight and analysis on the issues that matter to specialty pharma. I'm your host, Gina Clark. Today, we kick off the first of our two-part discussion on clinical pathways and other key payer trends that are poised to impact the oncology industry. We'll discuss what actions providers are taking and what payers are looking for when it comes to clinical processes and data. Joining us is Lesli Lord, Executive Director for Oncology Physician Resource and Southwest Oncology Network. She's also an expert in practice management and reimbursement issues. Thanks for being with us today, Lesli.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Perhaps you can set the stage for our discussion by talking about the issues that community oncologists face. How are the economics of cancer care changing, and in what ways are these changes impacting oncology practices?
Well, oncology is a very tough position right now. I mean, when we look at the different pressures that are facing oncologists in the practices, you're looking at reimbursement challenges, we're looking at the impact of the regulatory changes that are occurring, in addition to cash flow issues. So at every single corner of practice efficiency, so to speak, they are being hit with different pressures, and I think that's the word we're going to be focusing on today is pressure, and they're feeling a lot of pressure right now.
What are physicians and administrators within oncology practices doing to maintain financial viability without reducing the quality of patient care?
Well, that's a really tough situation these practices are in right now because their reimbursements are being cut dramatically. Their cash flow is impacted because there are holds on different payments going on in the industry, plus with the payer pressures that they're dealing with in terms of prior authorizations, and they're dealing with all the red tape that they have to jump through in order to get reimbursed, and the cash flow issue, going back to that again. I mean, cash flow is a huge issue in oncology practices. When you're looking at, anywhere between $1.5 to $2 million per physician having to purchase these drugs, they have to cash flow this because they're inventorying these products in addition to administering them and then billing for them and waiting for the reimbursement. And we're seeing in different communities and in different states, upwards of 10 to 30% of our practices are having trouble making not only their payroll, but paying also their vendors for these drugs. So when you're looking at those kind of problems facing our oncologists and our practices these days, then really the only solutions they have is to increase their business efficiencies. That means document better, bill more efficiently, make sure that they're handling their business efficiencies in terms of staffing and looking at the education side of it. I mean, there's very few options they have left right now to be viable other than just expanding or maybe merging with other groups, but right now it's coming back down to maintaining that cash flow so that they can stay in business.
Obviously, any negative trend for prescribers has the potential to impact pharmaceutical manufacturers negatively as well. How have you seen manufacturers respond to this trend, and in what areas can they be doing more?
Well, manufacturers have done a nice job in terms of their patient assistance programs, their opportunities they've provided to the practices in terms of education, their data submissions on how to use their product. But the practices need a lot more help, and it's not only the manufacturers that can provide that help. They need help with their legislators to be able to fix some of the problems that are occurring right now in oncology with the ASP reimbursement. It's a flawed system. And so when you couple that with lower reimbursements, payer challenges that they're dealing with in terms of documentation problems, prior authorization that they're being faced with, every time they turn around, these providers are being hit with another challenge. And so they just need a lot of support in terms of patient assistance, copay assistance, education and pure data on how that they can look at their practice, identify what they can do to be able to stay alive, at least in the short term.
Lesli, there are quite a few misconceptions about what clinical pathways actually are and how they are being implemented. Based on your experience, what can you share about the practical implementations of these trends?
Well, pathways, I believe, are here to stay for right now. And it's a wonderful tool, and that's what we have to remember. The pathways are a tool to be able to accomplish X, Y, or Z, whatever that X, Y, or Z is with that practice or with that payer. And the pathways are a tool that we can use as an administrator or a physician to be able to say to our payers, we're treating our patients in the certain way that's clinically driven, and that there's going to reduce the variability in the care. And how we can do that is we design a plan and how the pathways are going to be used. Say you choose 3, breast, colon, and lung, your biggest ones right there, and maybe throw in a supportive care pathway. You get a team of physicians, whether it's within the same practice or in that community or in that state, to develop the pathways that are a subset of the NCCN guidelines. Based on that, then they develop these pathways, and then they set a compliance level that says, okay, we know in oncology you can't treat 100% of the patients 100% of the way, but we do know that data is showing that anywhere from 85 to 92% of patients can be treated on these pathways, and that's very helpful with the payers, because if we can say to a payer that 87% of all of our breast cancer patients are going to be treated in this way, then we've reduced the variability of care. We've identified if there are any outliers, what those outliers are and why. We've standardized the care, which standardization shows that you're decreasing hospitalization in a lot of cases when we're looking at the data, and also reducing errors, which is very important, obviously, in oncology. So when you have a pathway program in place that identifies a set of pathways, and you say, we're going to follow them 70% of the time. And as a result of that, that allows you to be able to have any kind of outliers in there. That's a really good show of faith, I guess, to be able to show your payer, we're going to follow these pathways, and this is why we think it's very valuable to do so. And then if you want to look at the next point of that, when you've developed those pathways, then you go to your payer and say, okay, we want to be able to treat our patients this way, okay? And a lot of questions I get are, how is this valuable to the payer? And it's very valuable to them because obviously, like we discussed before, it reduces the variability of their care, of their costs. So by them being able to say that, it takes the payers out of any decision making on how a patient should be treated, which is what they want. They really don't want to get involved in that. So when you go to them and say, now, we have these pathways, and we need you to sponsor this quality initiative. It's not a payer negotiation. That's something that's miscommunicated, I think, a lot in the industry. It's not a payer negotiation. It's a quality initiative that you're going to a payer and saying, this is how we want to treat it, and we need your help to sponsor this quality initiative. And by doing that, we need to decrease some of the misincentives that are in place right now in the reimbursement and the prior authorization. So then you identify with that payer. What's their pain right now? Well, their pain is reducing the variability. Our pain is their prior auths are killing us. So maybe you can use your pathway to say to that payer, look, if we follow this pathway, maybe you can remove that prior auth out of that. All of a sudden, you're creating a quality initiative with that payer, and you're developing some collaboration, which is a really good first start in that.